I never imagined the moment my life would feel like it was being dissected in front of strangers. And yet, there I was, sitting in a courtroom, my hands resting flat on the polished wood table, trying to steady my breathing. My name is Christine Wisdom. I'm 38, a mother of 2, and until that day, I thought my marriage was strong. I thought I knew my husband, but in one sentence, he proved I had been wrong. "She's worthless," he said. Just like that, in front of everyone. Not shouted, not whispered, just stated like it was an undeniable fact. My heart sank, but I didn't react. Not because it didn't hurt. Oh, it hurt more than I can describe. But reacting would have played right into his narrative. He wanted me small, invisible, silenced. The judge didn't respond immediately. She simply looked over her glasses at my husband, studying him, not with anger, not with judgment, but with curiosity. And in that silence, I felt something shift. A part of me that had been quietly observing, quietly recording, began to align. I had been underestimated, and that underestimation would soon work in my favor. 3 weeks before this hearing, my husband, Derek, had filed an emergency petition. He claimed I was incapable of managing our family finances, incapable of making decisions for our household, and emotionally unstable. Within 48 hours, my personal accounts were frozen, my access to joint accounts removed, and my credit lines temporarily suspended. Just like that, I was declared incompetent by someone I had trusted for over a decade. I didn't scream. I didn't storm out. I watched. I waited. And I planned. Years of living under his shadow had taught me one thing. Silence is a weapon when you know how to use it. I work in financial consulting. My life is numbers, patterns, and investigations. Most of my work goes unnoticed. I dig through spreadsheets, track irregularities, and uncover fraud that nobody else sees. Derek never understood it. He never thought I was capable of seeing things beyond what appeared on the surface. And that ignorance, that arrogance, would become his undoing. For weeks leading up to the hearing, I observed quietly. I let him carry out his plan, thinking he was in control. He moved our assets around, accessed accounts, signed documents in my name while I wasn't looking. But I had learned the power of documentation. Every transaction, every email, every subtle instruction he made that was meant to look innocuous, I cataloged it. I built a timeline, meticulously, quietly, in the background. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom felt smaller than I imagined. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly. The smell of paper and polish hung in the air, and the benches creaked under the weight of strangers who had no idea what was about to unfold. Derek stood a few feet away, confident, smug, believing that his words had already sealed my fate. The judge cleared her throat. "Mrs. Wisdom," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "You've remained silent throughout these proceedings. Is that intentional?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied. My voice was steady, measured, like the calm before a storm. "Why?" she asked. "Because assumptions collapse under the weight of facts," I said, "and this petition rests entirely on assumptions." The courtroom went quiet. Derek's smirk faltered, just slightly. He hadn't expected this. No one had. For months, Derek had tried to paint me as irresponsible, unstable, and incapable. He told friends, relatives, even our children that I didn't understand finances, that I wasn't equipped to manage our household. He thought his words alone would sway the court. He didn't realize that silence can be a form of resistance, that careful observation can be far more powerful than outrage. I started my preparation by digging into our past transactions. Every bill, every withdrawal, every minor transfer Derek had made during the weeks he had full access, I traced it. Most were routine, but patterns began to emerge. Transactions were frequently routed through accounts I didn't recognize, always just below thresholds that would draw attention. Fees labeled as consulting or administrative didn't match any service we had received. It was subtle, but deliberate. Then there were the documents. Derek had convinced me, subtly, over the years, that I could trust him with our financial records. And I did. But within those files, I started finding inconsistencies. Duplicate checks, missing receipts, oddly timed wire transfers. Nothing overtly criminal. Nothing I could accuse him of outright. But together, They formed a pattern that told a story Derek didn't expect me to see. I contacted my attorney, Rachel Grant, and we quietly built our case. We didn't attack Derek directly. We let the evidence speak for itself. Banks were contacted, compliance reviews were triggered, independent audits began. I stayed calm. I remained consistent. I answered only what was asked. I gave nothing extra. Every detail, every subtle discrepancy began to point back to him. On the day of the courtroom hearing, Derek delivered his ultimate blow. "She's worthless," he said, expecting gasps, expecting judgment, expecting victory. But the judge didn't react. Instead, she leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "Counselor," she asked Derek's attorney, "are you certain you understand Mrs. Wisdom's professional background and qualifications?" There was a pause. Derek shifted uncomfortably. His attorney hesitated. For the first time, I could see the confidence drain from his posture. He had underestimated me completely. My attorney rose calmly. "Your Honor," Rachel said, "this petition alleges incompetence, yet the records independently corroborate Mrs. Wisdom's meticulous oversight and professional expertise. The discrepancies in Mr. Derek Wisdom's management, however, indicate a pattern of misrepresentation and misuse." She presented our timeline. Each transaction, each irregularity lined up perfectly. Every attempt Derek had made to appear in control was revealed as manipulation. His plan, which he thought flawless, was unraveling in real time. Derek's face paled. The courtroom, once tense with anticipation, shifted. Whispers floated quietly across the benches. People were leaning forward, trying to absorb what was happening. The smugness he had carried for months dissolved into tension. He realized, too late, that he had been outmaneuvered. The judge reviewed the documents with careful precision. Then, in a voice that carried authority without spectacle, she denied Derek's petition. She cited the independent audits, the corroborated evidence, and the pattern of exploitation. Derek could no longer maintain his narrative. He tried to argue, to object, but every point he made was met with evidence-backed rebuttals. Outside the courtroom, Derek avoided my gaze. He had expected humiliation. He had received justice. Quiet, precise, undeniable justice that didn't rely on theatrics. The months of preparation, patience, and observation had paid off. I hadn't needed to yell. I hadn't needed to storm out. I had only needed to stay true to the facts. The aftermath wasn't instant. Our children were cautious. Our friends were shocked. But the truth had been set in motion. The banks reviewed additional accounts. Compliance officers filed reports. Derek's credibility in our community shifted quietly but permanently. The system moved deliberately, but it moved, and I stayed consistent, measured, patient. Weeks later, Derek approached me, finally. His words were quiet, almost offensive. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I did," I replied calmly, "because the truth matters, and it always catches up." Healing for me and my children began in small increments. Conversations that had been blocked by fear or lies slowly became possible. Trust, once fractured, started to rebuild. I didn't need him to admit fault. I didn't need public apologies. I only needed the system to recognize what had been done. This experience taught me that silence, observation, and patience are powerful tools when wielded wisely. Being underestimated isn't a weakness. It can be a strategy. Being ignored isn't insignificance. It can be an advantage. And most importantly, truth, when supported by evidence, can dismantle even the most confident facade. If you're still here, listening, thank you. Thank you for staying through every uncomfortable moment, every betrayal, every quiet act of preparation. If you've ever been dismissed, ignored, or told you're incapable, remember this: the right strategy, the right patience, and a careful record can turn the tide. Justice, in its own time, is often quiet, methodical, and undeniable. And for those watching who want more stories like this, stories of betrayal, revenge, and uncovering the truth, subscribe. These stories aren't just entertainment. They're lessons in patience, strategy, and the power of paying attention when others think you're not. And here's the thing. This story isn't just mine. I know so many of you have been in situations where someone tried to take advantage of your trust, belittled you in front of others, or made you feel invisible. It's infuriating, humiliating, and exhausting. But sometimes the most satisfying victories are quiet. They don't need dramatic confrontations or shouting matches. They're about letting facts and patience speak louder than anyone's words ever could. I want to hear from you. Has anyone ever underestimated you like that? Have you had to stay silent while building your case behind the scenes? Or maybe you've had your own aha moment when truth finally caught up with someone who thought they were untouchable. Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you notice details I missed in my story, or patterns you think I should have shared, don't hesitate to point them out. Sometimes the audience sees what even the storyteller doesn't. Your perspective could make the next story even better. Because these stories aren't just entertainment. They're lessons in patience, strategy, and resilience. And I want us to learn together.